Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 2 o'clock. Thanks everyone for being here. We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get going. Any additions or deletions to the agenda in front of you?
I was going to share a little bit, just a very short PowerPoint on the results from the Lake Windsor Drawdown last year.
Okay, and we certainly can accommodate that. For approval of the previous minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Second. Okay. Okay, board member comments. Any board members have any comments? Okay, Tom?
You'll see in your packet today on page 7, and I don't want to skip ahead in any way, but I just want to make the comment that we were asked to put together a regulation. Management isn't necessarily we want to see what the Lakes Committee has to say about this, but we've drafted it as a starting point for discussion. This doesn't necessarily come with a recommendation. It's just we wanted to make sure that we had something that would be legally enforceable.
Okay. And when does the, for next year, I'm assuming we can't affect this year, but when would we have to make a decision to impact next year?
It would be best to have it by December 1. A few people register their boats in December. We get more activity with regard to registration in January, February, March. But if we can get it where the very first person that is registering their boat, which usually is in December, is aware of the new regulation, that would be best.
Okay. Any other comments, Tom?
No, thank you.
Okay, Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. We'll go with our notes for the month first, and then I have a little bit of a presentation to share. We had 8,846 Lake Ranger contacts for the month of July. That's up from 4,600 in July of 18 and 4,228 in June of this year. We can attribute that to our increased staff and presence on the lakes. We had 104 hours boat hours and 226 boat contacts. We did have our boat in the shop for a little bit of that time, so that kind of dampened those numbers a little bit. I just wanted to recognize a couple of our Lake Rangers in front of the committee, Bob Walker and Lee Cronky. They received the Celebrating Success Award last month for developing and almost immediately implementing our alcohol policy for boat usage. Went beautifully. It was in collaboration with the city PD and worked just like it should have. So we recognized those folks last month for a job well done. We're still removing many trees from the lakes from the spring storms. I don't know, other than to blame the weather. That's what we blame everything on. But we've had some particular troublesome trees that we have been able to get. So it hasn't been too much of an issue. In our Lake Ecology and Fisheries Department, we continue to see the benefits of the rains for our fertilization, which has been minimal this year. We did fertilize for Loch Lomond for the first time last week. The E. coli at the beach has been in check all summer. It's actually on a downward trend right now, 9.8 just about a week ago, down from 39.9 the month before, and 127 is the action level. Anything above that, we have to close the beach, so we're nowhere close to that. We moved 8,000 saugeye to Lake Ann this spring, 5,500 to Lake Windsor. Just last week we moved an additional 200, and some of those fish were up to 7 inches in length, so they were good quality fish. We're Also, we found that our black crappie did spawn in our ponds. We didn't think that that had happened, so we'll be moving those in October. That's, of course, good news. We're draining 2 Burksdale ponds right now in anticipation of raising blue catfish this fall and winter. We haven't stocked those since 2014 because they were previously given to us by the state. They no longer do that, and it's hard to find those in a private hatchery. Our goose roundup is now complete, and we we have captured 57 for the year. And just one other thing, Chris and Jennifer from our water quality lab attended the 2019 Arkansas Water Resources Center Water Conference. So they got some good networking opportunities and some continuing education there. So that's our notes. You have anything to add? And if we can, boot the screen up. The first part of this just kind of recaps what we did on Lake Windsor for the drawdown and what we can kind of anticipate on Lake Ann. And then at the very end, I included some maps on the 200-foot setback for no wakes, so the whole room can see that. So if let this boot up.
Just give it a second, you know.
So got a call from Dan Gilman this morning, who I believe is in the room today, and I just wanted to know what the impacts were from the Lake Windsor drawdown last year and what we can expect when we do this kind of thing. And I thought it was a pretty good idea. So just real quick rehab, some of the items that we intended to get done, and then whether we succeeded or not. So we removed a gravel bar near the London ramp. We stabilized the bank at the boat ramp as well. We inspected the spillway. We inspected and repaired the London landing ramp, and we also made it wider by about 6 feet, and that really helped out that area. We removed gravel and silt from Pontoon Park, and we allowed opportunity to build and repair docks and seawalls. And so, and also to remove silt at the backs of coves. Last summer through the fall, there were 37 permits issued by the city and to us for work in the lakes that were related to improvements of docks and seawalls. So that's an important part of that as well. So just some before and after pictures. This is at London Landing. It's hard to tell here, but that whole area on the left was removed. And so it looks like it's still there, but that actually was put back there on purpose. There was some erosion on that bank, and so that stream now shoots more out into the middle of the lake and doesn't cut that person's property when it floods. So we'll move on. So here is the London boat ramp. The section on the left is new concrete, which shows the added width there. And then on the right, that big riprap is to stabilize that bank that has been sloughing off onto that ramp for years now. This is at Pontoon Park. That the left-hand picture is the before. That real grassy area is a gravel bar that was completely removed. And you can see on the right, that picture was taken today. So now, this is kind of jumping ahead to one of the other items on the agenda. This is just the remaining 4 slides are just maps that show a setback of 150 and 200 feet for no wakes. That's all I have.
Okay. Did that cover everybody? Got all that. Okay, so the first thing I think we can cover off on fairly quickly is the capital projects for 2020. I think we've discussed those for about 2 meetings. This will be our 3rd meeting. I haven't received anything from any of you guys, so if anybody has anything they want to discuss today, we can talk about that. If not, I can submit the latest document that we have, and I think it's part of the packet, or if it's not. Yes, it's the last 2 pages of the packet. If not, we can submit that and put it on record. Does anybody have anything that they need to add or take off, or? I know Tom said it was gonna be a pretty lean year next year, so we tried to, at least the top part, just kind of things that we felt were kind of critical to maintain, and then the need to do's or the want to do's are on the bottom, and we really don't have a whole lot of those. And even the one I have on there is probably not gonna happen anyway, but. Anybody? Okay. If you guys get anything, have any ideas in the next week or 2, send them to me, and I can definitely amend the document and send it in, but that pretty much takes care of that. So we move on to the biggest topic for today's meeting, and that's the wake boat issue on Bella Vista Lakes. So does someone want to, Rick, do you want to start out by kind of telling us what transpired and give us kind of a brief overview of, I guess, where we are to date? And you don't have to go to your notes or anything, but like
Right.
at the last meeting, I remember hearing a report from some of the rangers that our July 4th weekend was fairly quiet, no real incidents. So this year, can you say that, just give us an overview of this year versus last, based upon the new increased patrols and the 150-foot setback we implemented last year?
Well, I was on vacation during last month's meeting, but I think I can relay a couple points. So that the 150-foot setback or the no wake zone is something that we've strictly been enforcing, and the few wake boaters that we do have become fully aware of what we're dealing with. We have had some skiers and tubers, and I think it's because of young children on skis and tubes that have been right on the bank. And I think they do that because if they fall off, they want the kids to be close to shore. But I know personally I've corrected 2 or 3 people not in compliance there. But so as sort of a compromise last year, of course, we went to the 150-foot setback, and we feel like that we've gotten pretty good compliance with that. Now, are we always out there when someone is using those boats? No, and but we've been better about being responsive. We've now got a Lake Ranger phone with a published phone number that folks that are observing violations can call directly and get somebody out there while the violation is still occurring. And I guess what brings us to today's meeting is the recent amendment from the wakeboard industry of a 200-foot setback and not a 150-foot setback. So I guess that opens the discussion for today and where we go from here.
So in your presentation, I noticed you had a 200-foot setback on Loch Lomond, and I'm assuming that Loch Lomond is our biggest lake, so it's most easily accommodatable to that sort of a 200-foot setback.
Well, there remains room on all of our
Okay.
ski lakes for a 200-foot setback. It makes it pretty tight on Lake Ann, but there is room, and we can look at all those maps and discuss things from there.
Okay. So to date, we've gotten recommendations. Again, the industry has said that the standard has moved from 150 to 200 feet, and we've got several pages of information that show wave height, dispersions, and things like that. So does anybody on the committee have anything to say before I go to the members in the audience? and get
Yeah,
opinion
I would
from
like
them?
to say something about the, the wake test that was done by C.A. Gowdy and Associates, which is the one that the WSIA commissioned to do. This test was done in 2015, and in 2015, they used a Mastercraft boat, which was a wake boat. It was not a wake/surf boat. Therefore, the maximum wave that boat could put out is about 3 feet. And if you look at the chart, you'll see that the maximum weight that this boat put out was 27.83 feet. Now, if we look at the boats today, specifically the wake/surf boats, they can put out a wake in excess of 5 feet. So I did some calculations here, and I said, okay, let's talk about a 5-foot wake on this chart, and looking at the percentage of reductions after 200 and 300 feet. Well, a 60-foot wake at 300 feet is still 30 inches high. It's not down here to this 12.92 like they showed. Even at 200 feet, again, following this chart and the depreciation of the wave per so many feet, at 200 feet, you still have a 3-foot wave if you're generating a 5-foot wave. So therefore, I don't really feel that this is a valid test to look at without looking at what today's boats are doing as compared to a 2015 wake boat only. So that was the one comment I wanted to make.
You have something to say?
Any questions? Yes.
So when we drafted the sample regulation on page 7, what we did was so our general counsel unfortunately is not here today. He's taking his soon-to-be freshman son to college, but we definitely can bring back to him any questions that come up. But what we did was we did a kind of a national search to see if we could find any good language, and it appears that the best way to do is, since there's no clear definition of what a wake boat is, and there's devices that you can do to a regular boat that turns it into a wake boat, we decided to go with the description of the activity as opposed to the description of the boat, which made a lot of sense. And so we went through and we included the 300 feet that was proposed by some property owners on Lake Windsor. Now, a couple things that had come up that I wanted, that Doug asked me to let you guys know about is a few people have asked us if we could grandfather in current ones, and he says you can't go down that road. Is if you're having a band, you can't have a band except for you. You can't have a sunset date. You know, in 2023, we're gonna no longer allow. If you can't allow it now, you can't prohibit it later. You know, you can't have a disjointed policy. So it's either you do it or you don't do it. So a grandfather approach would not work, but having a ban as he has written it here would work if that is the inclination of the Lakes Committee.
Okay. So in the top statement in the current okay, that's the current regulation, and this is proposed, I got it. So the first part of the possible regulation is prohibited within 100 feet of the designated recreation area. Could we not stipulate wake boating activities? Could we not specify a different number of feet? In other words, the association is saying we need 200 feet now, and I don't see anything about that in this regulation.
So the top section is really for just regular ski boats and tubing.
Okay,
And we could stipulate that on have a header similar to where we have a header for wake boat regulations. So this is just for regular skiing. And then we have one specifically called out for wake boats.
so the wake boat, the regulation that is being bandied about is basically not allowing any sort of wake boats on any other lake except Loch Lomond.
Well, the proposal that came from the residents on Lake Windsor at 300 feet, really Loch Lomond is the only lake left. If the Lakes Committee goes down to 200 feet, then we could have additional lakes available or use them on additional lakes. But at 300 feet, it just, other than a narrow strip in the middle, it just wouldn't work with any other lake other than Loch Lomond.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Any other committee member comments? Because I think our next step is to take it to people in the audience and get their opinions.
I would like to make another comment. I think I mentioned this the last time that we had this discussion, and that is if we're gonna have a designated quote-unquote ski area of all types of skiing, including surfing and wake jumping and that kind of stuff, we need to mark it. Now, I talked with Rick about this at that particular time. I said, are we gonna put buoys at 150 feet? And he said, buoys are very expensive. And I looked him up today, and he's absolutely right. One buoy's $200, some of them are $300. But,
Well, it's really not feasible to ring the outside of the lake
Right.
with 20 or 30 buoys.
right, but I'm talking about the ski area. This is what I'm trying to get to.
But and that's what I'm talking about.
If we had a ski area, and I looked them up on the internet, my son was in water ski, and he was actually the president of the ski club when he was at U of A. And they have these little, they look like a little volleyball, and they have them of different colors. Well, they're $6.50.
Mhm.
They're pretty cheap. And I was thinking that if we could maybe implement using those and put them every 50 yards or 100 yards or whatever it is, and actually have a marked area, so that would hopefully prevent these people from going out of that marked area and creating these big weights closer to the shore. That was just an idea I had.
That's
I wanted to throw out.
obviously worth considering.
You think that would maybe possible?
If we want that many floating objects on the lake.
Yeah. But if they're far enough apart, it shouldn't be
Mhm.
a problem. And, they are bright. You can get them orange, yellow, green, red.
Right.
different
Is
colors.
that
worth
system
considering.
flexible so that you could put it out like on weekends or on during summer months and take it back up during the winter?
I believe you could do that because basically it's some concrete blocks on a rope holding the buoy up. This buoy, because it's just a floating ball.
Okay.
I mean, that's the way they do the ski courses. And actually, they're a little more sophisticated than that. They actually build a complete PVC grid, and they're tied to the grid so that they know they're the correct spacing.
Right.
But the spacing wouldn't be that critical. I mean, you just use your GPS and
Mhm.
say, I'm gonna drop one every 100 yards or 200 yards, so that they'll know that that's the area they're supposed to be in. And if they're outside that area, then the patrol people can get them for that.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to judge. When you see somebody at a distance.
Right.
To judge how far they are. And so there have been interactions with members that say, well, no, I was far enough off, and so then you're in an argument.
Right.
But
But
that's.
if it's marked,
Mhm. Then
they-
you know for sure.
there's no argument.
Yeah.
And I'd be cautious about putting them out, taking them back, because, you could be in the off season and the weather's beautiful and you get a lot of usage, and then we get
Right.
a lot of wakes, and we definitely don't want to be going to Rick and John and saying, put out this weekend, take them out, put them out, take them out, put them out. That's a lot of man hours.
Right.
I'd rather go, whatever system you go with is, let's think permanent, not temporary.
Yeah.
Might be better to buy the $200 ones and have them out there all the time.
Yeah.
So my questions about this are, they come back to what are we solving for, right? So we've heard also from people, just an observation that you put out these barriers, you say you have to ski in this area, and then on a really nice day, you have 2 or 3 pontoon boats go dock out there, and what happens? Well, people start going around them. And so, you know, are we going down the right path, or are we actually solving for anything that our current rules don't solve for? More rules just become, they create the complexity and harder to enforce, right? Probably harder to understand. And so you guys all know that I've been an advocate of, it's not the boat, right? It's not the person who's wakeboarding behind it, right? It's not the rules, it's the driver, right? And so if you have people that are complying with reasonable, you know, hey, there's a person out there, I don't want to hurt them, right? I have respect for other people in this shared resource, then do we have the right set of rules? And so the one that resonates with me is, I think we had somebody come talk to us, and it was about the pontoon boat. I thought, I hadn't thought of that. So, you know, is it going to work? Is it going to do any good to implement new rules and impose more restrictions, or do we already have a set of rules that can accomplish that? And if the 200-foot rule is a new thing that, you know, you talked about larger wakes, and it's news to me. I haven't been tracking that stuff every day, but if there's a new standard, maybe we should consider that. But I have a lot of thoughts about what we're doing with additional rules on this.
Excuse me, could we be sure the lights are turned on? It's hard to hear.
Yeah, if everyone would speak into their mic and make sure you're,
Is that not loud enough? Sorry.
yes, just get close to your mic and you can be heard, I think.
It's on. Yep.
Okay, so now I'd like to open it up to the audience, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes if you could, because we have a big group, and we want to get through things quickly. So if you would limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Okay. You.
It's gonna be hard for Dan to go through that.
Yeah, it's hard for Dan.
Okay, first of all, I don't have any concern about drawing down lakes. But one of the things I wondered myself is about if we do it for the health of the lake. Okay, could you respond to that? Could you?
So we haven't seen any negative effects to drawing our lakes down.
No, I'm just saying, are these, you know, see, I hear things from other members.
Mhm.
Okay, and one of the, they say, I've heard people say that you must draw them down.
From what standpoint?
Well, for the health, because they're an impoundment, and, I mean, just, I'll leave that alone, okay?
Okay.
But you can think about that. I have no objection to drawing down a lake. I can understand repairs, obviously.
So, so it does, drawing down a lake does allow some of the surplus fish production to be consumed by the larger fish in the lake. If your goal is to reduce the overall standing crop, but to improve quality.
Does it improve water quality?
Not really
With
one way
new
or
water?
another. No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, just one other thing is, do you have a plan for Lake Ann?
We're developing plans for all
Okay,
the lakes.
developing, okay.
They're in
And
some
one other
progress.
thing is a drawdown, does it hurt these recently stocked fish?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yes, sir. Please state your name too when you come up. We got yours, Dan. But any new people that come up, just state your name.
Hi, I'm Don Weiniger. I'm one of the residents on Lake Windsor that sent the message to the board and the Lake Committee. First, I want to thank you all for considering what we said, and it seems like action will be taken. We hope the action will satisfy everyone concerned. I appreciate your comments about what wake boats are now, the surf boats. They have huge waves. I think, Tom, you mentioned there's how many wake boats registered in Bella Vista?
I would be concerned as to whether I'm accurately reporting it. We have 5 that have indicated they are wake boat owners, but because of the additional devices that you can add to a boat to give it wake boat capabilities,
Yeah.
I'm not certain that that number is accurate. It could be higher. We know it's a minimum of 5. It could be higher. John, would that be an accurate way of describing it?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So it could be a little bit higher, because keep in mind, when a person registers their boat at Member Services,
It's less.
they may not fully, the person behind the counter may not have a full education regarding wake boats
I
and so
understand.
forth. So it could be a little bit higher.
Probably not significantly higher. But
No,
probably
I think 5 to 10 would probably be a good guesstimate.
Okay. There are literally hundreds of residents that own property on these lakes, Lake Windsor alone. We see it every day when those big boats are out on the water. The waves come crashing into and over our seawalls and docks. And I don't know if any of you own lake property and have seen these or not. I hear you say there's been no evidence of any damage or any incidents. I hope the incident that spurs you to action isn't somebody getting hurt, because these waves are huge, they are damaging to their seawalls, and they're damaging to our docks. If I'm reading the proposed regulation correctly that you're put forth at the time, it would restrict the use of these crafts to Lake Loch Lomond. Is that correct?
In the letter from the Lake Windsor residents, they had recommended 300 feet, and based upon my analysis and looking at the width of the other lakes, it really would only make sense to have it at Loch Lomond. You would be asking people to basically go north or up and down along the same strip, the same narrow strip on the other lakes, which would then create another that would create a safety problem. So it probably at 300 feet. Now that's something you could debate. Is 300 feet the right distance? Is it 200 feet? Is it 250?
I sent you a video one day of a wake boat that had to be 200 to 250 feet out. And the wake wasn't that big compared to some of them I've seen. It was still about 2 feet high, but it hit our wall. And the water comes shooting up through our planks and our deck, and it just swamps everything. And that was over 200 feet out. So I would encourage you, if you're going to put a new regulation in place, that it be a 300-foot limit at minimum. And we fully, I think I'm speaking for the Lake Windsor residents, we fully endorse the idea of restricting these boats to Loch Lomond. Again, thank you for your consideration and discussions, and we hope you arrive at a good decision for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Good afternoon, I'm Terry Wilson, and I live at 52 Churchill on Lake Windsor, dock number 12.
This is county GIS, sorry to interrupt. Terry.
Not a problem.
This is county GIS, and so this is not the most accurate way, but you'll see that I did a quick measurement from one side to the other, and that's 735 feet. So that kind of, to me, proves the point that if you made it 300 feet from each side, you'd only have a narrow 150-foot strip between the two, which I don't feel would be sufficient. Did the same thing for Lake Windsor, which is a slight bit narrower. So you're really only looking at Loch Lomond if you go to 300 feet. Sorry for the interruption.
Not a problem. The last time I was here, I showed you all a invoice for our seawall repair. It was only 10 years old to begin with, but it was around $6,200. So I have a vested interest in being here. And my wife, we also sent to Tom the information on the state of Minnesota that I hope you read and that you passed on to your legal people. But it's they are trying to ban these boats on any lake under 1,000 acres. and that legislation you should follow, because it's, I think it will definitely be passing for the state. For my own personal reason for being here, about 3 weeks ago, I was painting the front board on my dock that goes around my boathouse. I was standing in about 5 feet of water with a paintbrush in this hand and a small tray of paint on this hand and on my tiptoes. And when I heard it coming, I couldn't move fast enough, but a wake boat came probably 150 to 200 feet out. And when the wave hit me, it hit me so hard that it pushed me up against that front board of my dock and literally almost knocked the wind out of my chest. And I didn't drop the paintbrush or the paint, but by the time I got in and got the paint off my chest, 2 days later, I had black and blue marks under my breasts, yellow, purple, green. And if I'd have been a child in a life preserver on some type of floatable device that hit a dock that hard, I mean, it could have knocked them out, they could have drowned, and that's going to happen. I mean, that's going to happen because of these boats. And I challenge any of you, especially while the water's still warm, to bring your grandchildren over and put them in front of a dock and see if you trust them being in that water and where your love stands by putting them out there. So I'm going to point a finger. That's not very polite, but I'm going to point it at you, Tom, and this board, and to this committee, that you have the responsibility to correct this situation when you vote on these recommendations, and if not, I mean, you're going to sleep with what's going to happen, and that's really too bad. But thank you for all you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. My name is Alex Allen, and I spent a lot of time on the lakes with kayaking and stuff. And this year I haven't even gone out on the lake. I won't go out in the summer season because last year I was out on one of the inlet areas and a skier went between me and the shoreline, and I was only 30 feet, 40 feet max from the shore. And the boat was on this side. And I had 2 poles that were broken down that are 4 feet above. And somehow he got that tow rope over my kayak and stuff. But that right there scared the hell out of me. Because I'm a pretty good swimmer, but I'm 71 years old. I'm going to be 72. Getting in and out of a kayak isn't too hard, but getting out of a kayak in the water and you're swamped is tough. So maybe I should just give up kayaking in our lakes here and go back to even Beaver, where I go, and nobody seems, I have plenty of room. Nobody seems, and I don't go fishing out in the lake. I fish along the shore. That's where fly fishermen fish. So I'll leave you with that. Just safety, to me, is your major responsibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. I'm Todd Gainer. I live on Lake Loch Lomond, and I just want to talk a little bit about the other side of this because I've heard a lot from one perspective. So a little bit about me first. I am a lake property owner, arguably on the most exposed property on Lake Loch Lomond. I do have a wake boat. I'm one of the registered 5, so I did designate that myself. And of note, it is a 21-foot boat that does not have near the ballast that was listed in some of that report. So I want to start by saying let's focus on what the problem is here, because I'm completely aligned to that as well, and that is we do need to keep it safe, and we do need to make sure that, ultimately we're creating safe conditions. So when I look at the thing, it's about the safety and damage of the shoreline that we're trying to prevent. And what I want to challenge us to do is actually make the right policy that actually helps achieve that goal, rather than a blanket policy that probably isn't necessarily going to do it, or more importantly, may actually hurt the growth of this environment and actually hurt the sports that make some of these things fun. So let's start by doing that, but let's identify the root cause. When I think about this, I do think about the ratio of boats. Look at the Grand Canyon. That wasn't created by one giant storm. That was actually created by a river over a lot of time. Look at the ratio of boats that we actually have on the lakes. 5 registered wakeboard boats. Let's up it to 10, like I heard you say, Tom, and let's compare that against all of the other boats. This iPad is actually filled with pictures of, since I heard this meeting, of other boats that were non-wakeboard boats that were actually driving closer than 150 feet. I do feel your pain about the $6,000 of damage to your dock. My dock's over 300 feet long, or my seawall is. When I repair that, it's gonna be about $30,000. I also have, correct. I also have pictures of the damage that's been done to my dock, or my seawall. So I do feel the pain. But I wanna make sure that we are talking about the things that matter. And for the record, I've also seen a 4-foot wake come over my seawall, because that's how high it is, and there was no boat to be found. It was actually a naturally created wake that occurred. So I just wanna make sure that we're focused on the problem. The last thing I would say before we talk about moving on to solutions is, let's make sure that the problem isn't the existing boats. I just heard the use case of a person that cut you off, and I feel for that, that's horrible. But if they were traveling 40 feet, that's a problem with the existing rules, not necessarily with a wakeboard boat. So let's talk about existing. We need to enforce those existing rules first. I agree with you. I apologize, I don't know all the names, but I agree with you. Maybe it does help to have some markers. Rick, you and your team are great. You've actually talked to me one time and told me that rule, and I didn't know it. You haven't talked to me again about that.
Okay.
But I can tell you that maybe that would be helpful. The second thing that I would tell you is, let's talk about the other rules that are out there. Speed. We've got recommended speeds of 35 miles an hour. In that research that I just read, anything over 40, 45 miles an hour on plane actually can create waves that are more damaging because they're sustaining and they hit that. So let's talk about that aspect. And let's talk about that distance, because those are some of the drivers that are making it happen. Once we determine that that's the case, then let's move on and let's implement regulations that do actually fix the root cause that we've got here. What could that be? We've talked about markers for distance. The one caveat I would call out is let's make sure they're lit so that nobody runs into those things in the middle of the night. But what about the rental boats and the properties? I've seen some pretty crazy things from some of those folks that are out there, right? So we need to make sure that that's legitimate. Rick, I'm sure you can talk to some of that as well. It's those red canopied pontoon boats. I see them all the time. And the rental house that's out there, somebody brought an open engine, car engine boat that I could hear for 3 days straight that I assure you was driving much closer than even 50 feet. Second, let's talk about the speed. Let's actually start enforcing that speed. If that's what's gonna create the real issues, let's do it. And according to the research, that is one of the things. Weight is another one. Rather than blanketly limiting all wakeboard boats, let's talk about the weight limits, because that is something that we can control. Next, let's talk about a mechanism to report. I actually just learned about the phone number today at this. I would have loved to have known about that before, but let's talk about how we can make that more obvious. Maybe pictures. Let's talk about proactive alerting. Let's talk about things like that. And then maybe potential, if this is really something that we believe in, let's talk about maybe funding Rick for a little bit more, maybe doing more patrols or things like that, if that's a valid option. But my point with this is really saying that there are lots of options that can help us solve the root case rather than implementing blanket policies that are actually going to hurt the growth of this environment and hurt the fun that we all have on the lakes. No matter what we do, though, the one thing that I would say is what I started with, which is we do need to consider safety. And I think we should actually talk about the implications of narrowing that channel down. As a wakeboard owner, I have been out there several times, and I tell you what, I'm one of the first people to stop when it happens, because when you push people to that center channel, that could actually create other circumstances that are far worse. And so my question is, are we enforcing the rules that we need to, and are we being as targeted as we need to make sure that we keep growing as a community, as well as keep having fun and really enjoying these lakes that we probably all moved here for? So with that, I want to thank everybody, but I'm also happy to answer any questions, as it looks like I'm the one person talking for wakeboard boards as well. So, yes?
What kind of boat do you have?
It is a Chaparral 21-foot H2O surf. It does not create a 5-foot wake. I wish it did. Not for our wakes, but I mean, it'd be a lot of fun.
So you don't have the fins?
I actually do have a surf gate. So if you're talking about a fin, a surf gate is something that pushes it out. Just to provide a little bit of information about how that works, it pushes actually, the surf gate opens on the side that is opposite of the side that you're surfing on. And so then what that does is it sort of just channels the wave, and so it makes it just a little bit more, I would say, focused. But again, the wave is going to dissipate, similar to what that research is. I agree with whoever it was who said it at the beginning, that yes, there are boats that can create more wakes. If anybody goes to these videos, these people that are creating 5-foot wakes, they're extreme. They're overloading their boat on weight capacities, and they probably have 4,000 to 5,000 pounds, if not more, of ballast in their boat, with maybe potentially, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 10 people in their boat. So There are ways of regulating this and maintaining a safe environment, but I really think it's important that we think about this now because, I mean, one of the proposals that I heard was let's prohibit any type of wakeboard boat in a 100-acre lake or less. And I get that a lot of folks here are from Windsor, but I worry about let's make sure that it's the right policy for our community as a whole so that we don't go too far and not even hit the problem in the first place.
Can I
Any
ask you a
questions?
question?
Yeah.
And it's not personal.
Yeah.
But if you couldn't participate in this activity, would you live here?
Yeah, I probably would. Realistically, I probably would, but I don't think that's the point. I think the point of this is all about let's do the things that solve the root problem. I actually work for Walmart. I'm on part of a product team, and one of the first questions that we always ask ourselves is what problem are we solving? And if the problem that we're solving is the safety of the shores and we're solving the safety of the shorelines, let's make sure we're implementing the right regulations to do that, not blanket regulations that are going to prohibit other fun activities that are safe and don't damage people's shores.
One little question.
Yeah.
One little question for you. Let's say we doubled or tripled, maybe we had 40 of those. It's unlikely probably anytime soon.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, how would we manage that?
Yeah, so great question. And again, the reason I wanted to start, I'll answer that question, but before I start, the reason I wanted to say that is because, or why I brought up the ratio initially, is to talk about what's creating the damage. Again, I go back to my Grand Canyon example. I don't think, and I don't have documentation, I don't have proof, I just have a lot of pictures, that those are the people that are hurting my dock. But I just want to make sure that, that I brought it up initially saying, I don't think these are the people that are destroying our dock on whole. I'll bring up the point, sir, I don't know your name, I apologize. But I'll bring up the point that he made first, which is it's the driver. If you have a good driver that is courteous, that knows what they're doing, I think I'd be okay with it. I'm not going to tell you blanketly. I'm not going to lie to you all bold-faced and say I know exactly how I'd react. But if we had drivers that were acting responsibly, that were following the rules, that were considerate, I absolutely slow down. If there's a kayaker next to me, I'm not going to roll up right next to him or do anything like that. I think I'd be okay with it.
So how many people can use the lake at one time when we're out there wakeboating?
Plenty, to be honest with you. To
Can
be
all
quite
five
honest.
be on the same part of Lake Windsor?
So
and
I'm not
all
familiar with Windsor.
enjoying-
I've never been on Windsor.
Or even Loch Lomond, can you have all 5 wake boats on that?
Sure, absolutely. There have been at least 3 out there at a time that I've seen. I don't think I've seen all
3 at a
5.
time.
To be quite honest with you, sometimes I see skiers trying to get close to my boat, or not skiers, but tubers trying to get close to my boat because they actually like the wake of it. But could you do it? Absolutely. I mean, as long as people are following the regulations, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're supposed to go counterclockwise on the lake, right? As long as people are doing that, there's no problem with getting 5, 6. I bet you could get 10 people out there. It'd have to be sequenced, but it has to be sequenced when they're skiers as well. Tubers, to be quite honest with you, scare me a lot more than the wakeboarders. And here's why tubers scare the heck out of me if we're talking about safety. To get a good tube ride, what these people are doing is they're doing a continuous S type of motion. Rick, is this correct? They're doing a continuous S type of motion in the water because what they're trying to do is they're actually trying to use the centrifugal force that's created when you make that turn to get you a big ride. And then what they're trying to do is they hit that wake because that bounces the rider up, creates a fun, everybody's screaming, they're yelling, they're hooping, they're hollering. But the problem is that it's erratic. It's unpredictable movement. By definition of being a wakeboarder or a wake surfing more than wakeboarding, but by definition, your goal is to go straight so that you can actually ride that wake or that surf. And of course, when you're wakeboarding, then you're trying to jump the surf, but you're still going in a straight line because that creates predictability. I thank you all for the time, and again, I'd just like to say, let's focus on solving the problem in the way that makes sense, that still promotes our community and helps us grow and enjoy our lakes. Thank you all.
Thanks, Todd. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay. Any comments or questions from the board members or committee members at this point? I just asked Tom a little while ago that, so to enact, we really can't enact any kind of new legislation or any kind of new rules and regulations for this year, but we have till approximately December 1st to make recommendations for next year. And so I would think we'd be making this decision within the next 2 to 3 months. And that, which kind of leads to my next point. So we've heard a lot of comments today. I, for one, would like to digest what I've heard today, maybe do a little more research, and maybe talk to a few more people before I'm ready to vote on the issue. I don't know if you guys feel differently than that, but we've heard a lot of comments, varying degrees of opinions. We've got a lot to consider in this regulation, because if we do make this recommendation to ban wakeboarding on Windsor, and I don't think we have any people who own wake boats who live on Lake Windsor, but that's a big change for somebody. If they bought a house and a lot on Lake Windsor and invested in a boat, that's basically limiting their freedom. And while this may be the right decision, I am personally not comfortable voting on this today. So I would like to delay the vote for a month or two.
Matt, I was just gonna clarify, I think the way I read this regulation, if we implement this, it does not prohibit using that boat, it just prohibits using the equipment. So the boat could still operate on that lake without the tanks and the wings and all that stuff in place.
Right. Anybody else have any comments or questions, concerns?
Well, I would like to think that we could get some more statistics out. How many paddleboards, how many hot kayaks, and all the other lesser elaborate boats so we could compare ratios between these various types of watercraft, so we could say what is reasonable here under the circumstances and on the realities of the numbers that we have.
I have a question. Do you know if we have any cruisers on this lake? Like 24, 26, 28-foot cruisers? Inboards? Inboards?
Do you know?
We've got a couple of inboard deck boats. I don't think we've got any true.
No cruisers? Okay.
And to my knowledge, unless there's one on Lowland that I'm not aware of, I think most everything over there loans out at about 24 feet. There might be a 26-footer out there, but.
Okay. They put out horrendous waves.
Well, it was about the money for the
Okay.
motor trailer.
You want to bring that up now?
Yeah, Rick, I would like to know if you folks have had a chance to think about, capital items for the next year, a boat, motor, and trailer, a roaming boat, motor, and trailer that you need badly. I've seen the rigs you have, and they do need to be replaced.
So, our lake boats for Windsor, Loman, and Ann are in good shape. What we're in need of is what we call our tow-behind boat that we use on our smaller lakes. And this summer, it's gotten to the point where it has limited our patrols on those smaller lakes because it's been in the shop so much. If we can't get a new boat, we could probably get by with a new motor. But we're also in need of a truck. Those items are still tops.
What's the age of that truck and about how many miles, just to give us an idea?
I mean, we
Approximately.
have 4 in our fleet, right? So, but they're all approaching
Oh,
200,000 miles.
Okay, I see. So you don't use the same one for roaming?
Right.
I see, okay.
Yeah, we've got one in the fleet that is actually appropriate to tow with, and that truck is sitting right at 200,000 miles.
200,000 miles.
So do the fly tires need a specific request from Rick to go move forward, or can?
Well, I think they would like to know, the general ballpark amount, and to see if possibly the membership would consider helping out with its expense. It would have to be, of course, along with the other things that we help you with, like purchasing catfish and cleaning stations, et cetera. It would just be another item to consider.
Absolutely. I can get a list together, a revised list, and get it to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe just list, Rick, I would list like what a new boat and motor would cost, what a truck would cost, and then maybe give them a laundry list of things in priority order.
Yeah.
And that way they could kind of pick and choose where and when and how they wanted to help.
Sure. I'm sorry, did everyone get a chance to speak that needs to speak?
I think so, yes. So, any other comments from,
Well, there's another comment over here.
is there another comment over here?
Oh,
Okay.
why don't you raise your hand?
Okay, so, at this point, I don't have anything else today. Does anybody else have anything they want to say?
Next meeting will fall on September the 11th.
Okay, so everybody then, meeting adjourned.
We have those ratios in the specific categories, you know, that you sign
Well,
up
yeah,
for. We've got those numbers. I can get you accurate numbers today. Kayak numbers skyrocketed. They're like approaching 4,000.